She stepped into the wrong room, and into the most dangerous, heartbreaking, and miraculous chapter of her life. What she discovered the next day shattered everything she thought she knew about fate, identity, and love. Stay until the end, because the twist will leave you breathless. And before we begin, make sure you subscribe to this channel for more heart-stopping stories that will shake your soul. Aisha Khan never believed life could change in a single mistake, but that night, drenched in rain, exhausted after her scholarship interview, and carrying nothing but a folder of dreams, she pushed open the wrong hotel room door and stepped into a storm that destiny had been waiting years to unleash. She thought she had entered the women's dormitory room the university had arranged for out-of-city students, but instead she walked straight into the luxury suite of a man she had never seen. A man whose presence felt like fire and ice colliding, whose voice froze her heart mid-beat as he turned slowly, eyes deep like a silent ocean hiding storms, and asked, "Who are you, and why are you in my room?" She stuttered, apologizing, shaking from both cold and fear, but instead of anger, the stranger simply handed her a towel, placed his coat around her shoulders, and told her she shouldn't wander alone at night. Something in his tone was gentle yet dangerous, as if he carried scars he didn't reveal, secrets buried beneath a composed exterior, and though she didn't even know his name, her heartbeat refused to calm as she rushed out after realizing her mistake, embarrassed, grateful, and strangely unsettled by the way his eyes followed her to the door. Not with desire, but with a warning, as though he recognized something in her she didn't yet understand. The next morning, she hurried into the towering glass building of AR Corporation for her internship orientation, the opportunity she had fought for her entire life. And just as she stepped inside, her world collapsed for a moment as she saw a giant portrait of the CEO on the front wall. The same man whose room she had walked into last night, the same man whose coat she still carried in her backpack, slightly damp from her trembling hands. Her breath hitched as murmurs filled the lobby, everyone standing straighter the moment the elevator chimed, and then he emerged, cold, powerful, unreadable, no trace of the quiet stranger who had given her warmth without question. Employees bowed respectfully, cameras flashed, but when his eyes met hers, something flickered, recognition, curiosity, and a hint of the same warning she felt before. She froze, but he didn't acknowledge her beyond that single glance, instead walking forward with the commanding presence of a man whose decisions built or destroyed futures, and she couldn't understand why the man who helped her last night acted as if she was invisible now. The day flew in a blur until the HR manager suddenly called her into the executive elevator, telling her that the CEO personally requested her presence. Her pulse thundered as the doors opened to a floor wrapped in silence, the kind that belonged to power, where every breath felt like trespassing on sacred ground. She entered his office, cold, elegant, dangerous, and he stood by the window, back turned, hands in his pockets as he said, "You left without drying your hair last night." "That's careless." Her heart stopped. He remembered, and worse, he wasn't pretending anymore. When he turned to her, the softness from last night was gone, replaced by a mask of emotionless authority as he asked why she was applying for an internship when her university records showed she was among the top students but also someone who had financial struggles severe enough to miss deadlines because she worked nights to support her ill mother. She felt exposed, humiliated, wondering how he knew all this, until he said something that felt like the ground disappearing beneath her feet. "You remind me of someone I owed a debt to." She wanted to ask what that meant, but he dismissed her with an unreadable expression. Days passed like threads of tension woven into the air. The CEO, whose name she now knew was Rayan Malik, watched her from afar, always appearing when she least expected it, always offering guidance in sharp, cold words that somehow still protected her, as if he was shielding her from dangers she didn't see. Aisha's colleagues whispered that the CEO never interacted personally with interns, that he was ruthless, feared, untouchable, a man with no weaknesses. So why did he behave differently with her? Why did she catch him staring at her with a pain hidden beneath layers of ice? Why did she feel like she had stepped into a path written long before she was born? Everything spiraled when her scholarship was unexpectedly revoked due to missing documents, something she knew wasn't her fault. Panic consumed her, and before she could think, she found herself knocking on Rayan's office door, tears blurring her vision, not because she wanted him to fix her life, but because she had no one else to ask for guidance. But before she could speak, he said something that shattered her completely. You should never have come into my life, Aisha. The truth is more dangerous than your problems. She didn't understand. Was he warning her, rejecting her, or protecting her? But then his phone buzzed, and she heard words that froze her soul. Sir, the people investigating your brother's disappearance have found new evidence. They think the girl from the scholarship list might be connected. Her name was on that list. She staggered backward, her world tilting. Rand's eyes widened in horror, realizing she heard everything, and in that moment, the cold CEO she thought she knew vanished, replaced by a man whose fear was raw and real as he whispered, I never meant for you to be dragged into this. The truth unraveled like threads snapping one by one. Rand's younger brother had disappeared years ago under mysterious circumstances, last seen helping a girl from a rural village whose name was similar to Aisha's. That girl had run away, leaving behind clues someone now twisted to point at Aisha. Rand didn't suspect her. He feared for her, because whoever targeted his brother might now target her too. But the deeper truth was hidden beneath his fear. Rand had seen Aisha once before, years ago, when she was just a little girl crying outside a hospital, begging strangers to help her dying mother. His brother had helped her, giving money and promising to check on her village later, and he was never seen again. Aisha collapsed, grief and guilt consuming her, unable to breathe under the weight of a truth she never knew existed. The man she barely remembered as a child might have been lost because of an act of kindness toward her family. She sobbed, apologizing, but Rand gently held her shoulders, his voice shaking as he said, You were a child. This isn't your burden. The real enemy is still out there. That night, he personally escorted her home, refusing to let her walk alone, but as they reached her small apartment, a dark car sped past, throwing a stone with a note, Stay away from the CEO if you want to stay alive. Rand's entire body tensed, and for the first time, the ice around him cracked, revealing a man terrified of losing someone again. He moved her to a secure apartment, assigned guards, and stayed by her side through the night, sitting on the couch, eyes never leaving the door, as though keeping monsters away. In the quiet darkness, Aisha finally whispered what had been haunting her. Why are you protecting me? I'm nothing to you. His jaw tightened before he finally admitted a truth buried beneath years of pain. The night my brother disappeared, he told me he saved a girl, and that girl's tears made him believe miracles still exist. The moment you walked into my room, drenched and scared, wearing that same expression, I knew you were the girl he cared for. I knew I couldn't lose you too. She broke down, overwhelmed by a truth too heavy for her heart, but he wiped her tears with trembling hands, whispering, I don't care what mystery ties us together. I just need you safe. Days turned into a fragile bond of fear, trust, longing, and unanswered questions. Rand softened around her. Aisha's laughter returned, and for a brief moment, life felt like a miracle blooming from tragedy, until the final twist shattered everything again. The real culprit was revealed not as a stranger, but as Rand's own uncle, who wanted control of the company and had orchestrated the brother's disappearance years ago. When he realized Aisha could expose the truth, he targeted her. The climax struck like thunder when Aisha was kidnapped from the company parking lot. Rand reached the warehouse where she was held, fighting through guards, screaming her name, his voice cracking with fear until he finally broke through the door and found her tied, bruised, but alive. He held her like she was the last piece of his soul, whispering promises he never dared to speak before. You're not just a girl from my past. You're the reason I still believe in hope. The police took the uncle away, evidence recovered, mysteries resolved, and the brother, long believed gone, was found alive but injured in a remote clinic where he had hidden after escaping his captors. When he returned and saw Aisha, he smiled weakly and said, I told you miracles always find their way back. Tears flowed, healing years of wounds, and Rand took Aisha's hand, gently, reverently, as if holding something sacred, whispering, You entered my room by mistake, but you entered my life by destiny. And for the first time, she believed it too, not because of the danger, the heartbreak, or the miracles, but because sometimes the wrong door leads to the right story, the one written in the spaces between fear and hope, loss and love, and two souls who were always meant to find each other.